What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today I just wanted to discuss a topic that has been coming up quite a bit lately, and this is a trend that many people have noticed with Modern Warfare 3 and even in previous Call of Duty games. This trend was around, I just think it's kind of been amplified a little bit in this game, and this is very commonly when a new gun or aftermarket part like a conversion kit for a gun is launched, it starts off in a very good state. Many times it becomes like the best gun in the game, or at least one of the top few guns in the game, and then typically several weeks later they end up nerfing that gun to bring it more in line with the other guns in the game. Some solid examples of this with aftermarket parts would be like the Longbow Jack Tyrant kit. That launched in an incredibly powerful state, and it took actually a few nerfs to get it more in line with where it should be. Also, the Bass B Jack Outlaw kit, that one was a pretty extreme example because that one was insanely broken for only about a day or two before they ended up nerfing it completely. We also have like the Jack Maglift kit for the Haymaker. That one was obviously a very, very powerful option and a clear choice in the shotgun category. And then even most recently with the Jack Revenger kit for the BP50, I did just cover this one in great detail in yesterday's video, so if you missed that, you might want to check that out. But this is, in my opinion at least, one of the best guns in the game right now because they gave it so many upsides over the base BP50 with very few downsides to compensate for that. So it does appear that there's a pretty clear trend here, although I also want to point out this hasn't been the case for the entire life cycle of Modern Warfare 3, especially with these aftermarket parts. If you guys remember, early on in this game's life cycle, the aftermarket parts were gimmicks that were often just worse than the base version of the gun and really not worth using most of the time. I'm thinking back to like the Etten kit for the AMR-9 at launch. That was terrible. The Sidewinder Jack Thunder kit, completely useless. It was a worse version of the worst gun in the game. And I'm also thinking back to the Jack Signal Burst as well as the Jack Headhunter kit. These were all early kits that were added to the game, and when they were added, none of them were really standouts. If anything, they were a bit on the weak side, and eventually they received buffs over time, and I would say most of these are now at a point where they're at least decent, but they never really got any time in the spotlight. Now I know so far I've just been talking about aftermarket parts, but this also tends to happen with new guns as well that are added to the game. And I often see people pointing this out, and typically when they are pointing it out, it's in a very negative light. And they don't like the fact that they launch things in a very good state and then nerf them to be more in line with the guns that were already in the game. And on one hand, I kind of understand where people are coming from, at least when it comes to new guns. Not so much with the aftermarket parts, because typically, at least as far as I'm aware, you can't just buy a bundle for the new aftermarket part. At first, at least, the only way to unlock that is to complete your weekly challenges. So you can't spend real money, and therefore I don't really see the issue so much there. But with new guns, I definitely see more of an argument against this because in that case, there are typically opportunities to spend real money in order to unlock and use that gun earlier, like buying a bundle that features that gun, or just buying like the Black Cell Battle Pass or the Battle Pass and then a bunch of tier skips. And obviously, when you hear a gun is really good and you spend real money to unlock that gun early to use it right away, it can be frustrating when a few weeks later, they nerf that gun and it's no longer the standout that you paid for. And that's one of the many reasons that I just don't buy any bundles. I have zero interest in that. Sure, I do buy the Black Cell Battle Pass when I'm happy with the content support that we're getting for the game. And also a huge part of that is I just want to get those guns unlocked as soon as possible so I can get content out for you guys as soon as possible. If I wasn't running a YouTube channel, I highly doubt I'd be buying Black Cell. But when you think about this situation from the developer's perspective, of course it's in their best interest to launch new guns, at least in a slightly better state than the existing guns in the game. If you launch a new gun and it sucks, or it's just completely average and there's nothing interesting about it compared to the existing guns in the game, then people are obviously going to be much less likely to want to buy that bundle that features that gun. So I definitely think that's a big part of the story there, and I really think this is a trend you should be aware of, and maybe you want to reconsider spending real money in order to unlock a gun early just because it's good right now, because you should understand that eventually they're going to want to bring things into balance. In saying that though, the money argument doesn't work so much for aftermarket parts because, like I said, you typically can't buy a bundle with this week's aftermarket part immediately, like day one. Maybe down the road they'll add one that does that, but that's usually long after you would have plenty of opportunity to easily unlock it with weekly challenges. And so I think another really big reason that they tend to bring new guns and new aftermarket parts to the game in a very good state and then nerf them later is it's simply great for player retention throughout the year. People will come back week after week to complete those weekly challenges and unlock a new aftermarket part, especially if that aftermarket part is really good. If that aftermarket part didn't stand out at all, like the early aftermarket parts that we got that I talked about earlier in the video, then people are much less likely to worry about unlocking it right away via the weekly challenge. Like, what's the point of logging in immediately right on that Wednesday when it launches to get that unlocked if you know it's not going to perform very well and you're just better off with the base version of that gun anyway? So I think for player retention, this has actually been incredibly successful, and the addition of aftermarket parts almost every week, I know they don't do it every single week, but these weekly challenges where you can unlock effectively a new gun most weeks has been one of the best things that Modern Warfare 3 has done, in my opinion, and I really hope a system like this returns going forward with the Call of Duty franchise. I think it's great to be excited week after week to come back, complete your weekly challenges, and have something new and unique and very good to play around with. And honestly, as long as they're reasonable with the power of these items, I think this is so much better than the alternative of adding a new aftermarket part that's just not very good. The question I have for the people that are really against them bringing these powerful items to the game at first and then nerfing them later is, would you genuinely like the alternative of them bringing something new to the game and having it be weaker than the existing items that you were already using, or just bang on average where it's not really that exciting to use, it's just another addition to the many, many guns that we have in the game already? I mean, maybe for some of you, you genuinely would prefer that, but for me, I like the excitement of having something new that's actually fun and exciting and interesting to use. But again, I do think this needs to be done within reason. I definitely don't like situations like with the BAS-B kit that they brought, where that one was so incredibly overpowered that it completely broke weapon balance for about a day or two until they nerfed it into the ground. Like, I think it's totally fine if the new aftermarket part is one of the best guns in the game, but it definitely shouldn't be, like, by far the best gun in the entire game, and if you're not using it, you're going to struggle. So there definitely are limits to my opinion on this. I do prefer when new items are quite powerful, but they shouldn't be, like, way overpowered by any means. And then another factor to consider here as well that I think is important to mention is when they end up nerfing these items that they initially bring in better than most other guns in the game, I really hate to see it when they nerf things into the ground. Like with that BAS-B kit. I think that one's the perfect example. It went from being the best gun in the entire game to practically useless and super niche, and you probably will never want to use it again. When they do something like that and you see such a drastic swing, it can definitely feel like the devs have taken something away from you at that point. And that's unfortunate as well. I think the ideal to aim for is make the new gun or aftermarket part one of the top 10 guns in the game, and then if it is overperforming, which it likely would be if you do that, then just bring that down slightly with some nerfs that don't completely destroy the identity of what that kit or that gun is meant to do, in order to balance it with the existing guns in the game and in order to prevent extreme power creep over the year. And I should also point out here, these thoughts that I'm sharing when it comes to like bringing new guns into the game, this is independent from my thoughts on other weapon balancing. I still think it's important to be balancing existing guns as well. So bringing up some of the weaker guns, maybe nerfing some of the more powerful guns, just to keep things in balance and perhaps rotate the meta a little bit as well to keep things fresh and interesting. And there we go. That's pretty much everything I wanted to mention here when it comes to this topic. The main thing I wanted to point out here is, honestly, I like the direction that they've been going with this. I think it's a good thing that they're bringing items that are actually exciting to earn and unlock, even if it means those things are going to have to be nerfed and kept in check a few weeks later. To me, that's definitely preferable to the alternatives, which just aren't exciting at all to me. Now, of course, these are just my opinions, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this topic in those comments down below. Do you think it's a good thing that they add new items that are really good to the game and then nerf them down the road to keep them in check? Or would you prefer the alternative of bringing new things into the game that just don't really stand out and they just sort of blend in with the meta, or are maybe even just on the weaker side of things and not really worth using that much? Just let me know those thoughts down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.